Today we will go through demand, supply, and market equilibrium. We're going to go through examples of markets, what demand is and how it can change, supply and how it can change, how supply and demand interact to determine market equilibrium, and how they affect prices and quantities, what government set prices are and how they can cause surpluses and shortages. And then we're going to go through how supply and demand analysis can provide insights into actual economy situations. So markets are interactions between buyers and sellers. Markets can be local, national, or international. So prices are determined through the interactions of buyers and sellers. So the demand is a schedule or curve, amount consumers are willing and able to purchase at a given price. There's individual demand and market demand. So demand is, so as price goes down, quantity demand goes up. So that's the relationship. Inverse price and quantity demanded have an inverse relationship. As price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Law of demand, the negative or inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Other things equal, as price falls, the quantity demanded rises, and as price rises, the quantity demanded falls. Reasons include law of diminishing marginal utility, income effect, and substitution effects. So the demand curve is the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded shown on the graph. Quantity demanded is on the horizontal axis and price is on the vertical axis. So to get the market demand curve, you have to sum up each individual demand curve. So Joe, Jen, and Jay's are summed up. You have to add those up, and you get the total quantity demanded per week. And then you get the market demand through that. So demand is determined through changes in consumer tastes and preferences, change in number of buyers, and change in income. So for normal goods, if you have a higher salary, you'll pay for more in normal goods. So, for example, as you make more money, you will buy more expensive products. And then inferior goods, as you make more money, you will buy less cheap goods. So normal goods are expensive, and inferior goods are cheap. Can anyone think of what an example of an inferior good, or an example of a normal good? That's good. Yeah, that's great. So cheaper cloth would be inferior, brand name cloth would be normal. So that's great. Yeah, produce. Yeah, great examples, Jerry. That's great. Great, excellent job. So then complements and substitutes. So for that, if the price of ketchup goes up, the quantity demanded of mustard will go down, because more expensive to buy ketchup, and people usually buy ketchup and mustard together. So it makes sense. So like people will buy less ketchup and then they'll buy less mustard because they usually buy them together. And then substitutes. So like if the price of Chevrolet, like how about of Chevy cars goes up, people will have a lower quantity demanded of Chevy cars, and then a higher quantity demanded for other cars. Yeah, so they'll pay for other cars instead at a higher rate because Chevy became more expensive. They'll pick the cheaper ones. So this is a change in demand for corn. So if the demand for corn increases, the demand curve will shift right. So they will demand more more bushels, basically. Changes in buyer tastes. An example of that is physical fitness rises in popularity, increasing the demand for jogging shoes and bicycles. Cell phone popularity rises, reducing demand for landline phones. And then changing the number of buyers. Example of that would be a decline in the birth rate, reduces demand for children's toys. A change in income. Example would be a rise in incomes increases the demand for normal goods such as restaurant meals, sports tickets, and tablet computers, while reducing demand for inferior goods such as cabbage, turnips, and inexpensive wine. So people, if they become more rich, they will buy more expensive goods like sports tickets, and then buy less cheap products like cabbage. So if air travel becomes cheaper, people will buy less bus transportation, because they'll go more to air travel because it's cheaper. Uh, that's actually not a good example here. Actually, the better example would be a reduction in airfares reduces the demand for driving. That's probably a better example, because you're not going to take a bus to like, you're unlikely to take a bus to like Florida. You might drive to Florida, but there's probably not a bus that goes all the way there. So like you probably wouldn't drive to Florida now because it's cheaper to fly. So you fly to Florida if it becomes a lot cheaper. So that's a better example of what I wrote there. And then also bad weather in South America creates an expectation of higher future coffee bean prices. So there's more demand for today's coffee beans, because today's coffee beans are cheaper than what they think are going to be in the future. So the change in demand is a shift in the entire demand curve. Change in quantity demand is a movement along the curve. Supply is schedule a curve. It's the amount producers are willing and able to sell at a given price. There's individual supply and market supply. So law of supply, other things equal, as the price rises, the quantity supplied rises, and as the price falls, the quantity supplied falls. So the graph is shown. So basically they supply more if it's a higher price, because they'll make more money. So quantities on the x-axis, and then price on the y-axis. So as price gets higher, the producer will produce more quantity, because they will get a higher revenue for producing more. Yeah, so they get, like, as they produce more and more and more, they get a higher revenue. So that's why they keep producing. It's an incentive. So as we said, people respond to incentives. So in this case, yeah, so price goes up, they produce more. So then a decrease in supply would shift to the left, an increase in supply would shift to the right. Supply is determined by factor prices, technology, taxes, subsidies, prices of other goods, price expectations, number of sellers. Change in factor prices. So like if there's a decrease in the price of microchips, that increases the supply of computers, because it would be cheaper to produce a computer. So a decrease in the price of microchips makes it cheaper to produce more computers, so they produce more computers. So that would increase supply. And then the increase in the price of crude oil would make it more expensive to produce gasoline, so supply would shift left because it's more expensive. And then development of more effective wireless technology increases the supply of cell phones. So it's cheaper now to produce more cell phones, so supply shifts right because it's cheaper, so they'll produce more cell phones. Then the increase in excise tax on cigarettes reduces the supply of cigarettes, shifts left. A decline in subsidies to state universities reduces the supply of higher education. An increase in the price of cucumbers decreases the supply of watermelons. So, and then there's others here. So